What if the earliest version of you never disappeared? What if it stayed, quietly shaping the way you love, the way you fear, the way you reach for others, and the way you protect yourself? What if inside every adult, no matter how composed or weathered by experience, there lived a small and tender presence still waiting to be understood? The part of you that once looked up at the world with wide open wonder. The part that learned what safety meant. The part that learned what danger felt like. The part that learned how to adapt to the unpredictable movements of the people you depended on. And the part that still flinches, still brightens, still remembers. The inner child is not a metaphor for weakness. It is the imprint of your earliest emotional reality. It is the first architecture of your nervous system, the first map of love, the first blueprint of fear, the first spark of identity. It is the voice you rarely hear, but always feel. It is the earliest version of you that once learned how to survive in a world too large to understand. A world in which you had no power except the ability to attach, adapt, and hope. As you listen, you may notice your breath softening, a gentle loosening in the chest, a small unwinding around the shoulders. Let that be natural, not something to perform. Just a quiet reminder that your body too is listening, and in listening, it remembers. From the moment you entered the world, you were shaped by forces older than language. You were held, or perhaps not held enough. You were soothed, or perhaps left to soothe yourself. You were mirrored by faces that taught you who you were, or left with a confusing reflection that made you question your worth. These first experiences form a living thread that continues into adulthood, not as a conscious story, but as a felt reality. A pattern, a tone, a way of being. The inner child lives not in memory, but in emotion. Not in the past, but in the present. Every moment of tenderness, every spike of fear, every unexpected ache when someone turns away or raises their voice, traces back to the earliest version of you. Not because you are broken, but because you learned. And what you learned kept you alive. As we begin this journey, consider this simple truth. You do not outgrow the child you once were. You carry them. You protect them. You echo them. And sometimes, without realizing it, you become them again. But you can also learn to guide them, to heal them, to listen to what they've been whispering for years. Take one soft breath in. And without forcing anything, allow it to leave your body slowly. Feel the weight of the moment settle. Feel the ground beneath you. Feel the steadiness in your spine. This is where our story begins. A story not of childhood alone, but of the living pulse of emotion that continues through an entire lifetime. The story of how the earliest moments shaped the deepest layers of your being, and how understanding them brings you closer to the person you are capable of becoming. This is the psychology of the inner child. This is the emotional blueprint of a lifetime. And this is where we begin. The first years. The beginning of life is both fragile and extraordinary. A newborn arrives with a brain that is unfinished, wiring itself moment by moment, shaped by every sound, every touch, every expression that passes across the face of a caregiver. These first years are not merely a chapter of life. They are the foundation upon which all later emotion, identity, and relational patterns are built. A child does not learn through language. A child learns through sensation, through the rhythms of breath, through the tone of a parent's voice, through the warmth or absence of warmth in the home. In these early years, The brain is a landscape in bloom. Synapses form at a rate that will never be matched again. Neural pathways grow in response to the emotional climate surrounding the child. Safety strengthens certain circuits. Stress strengthens others. Connection shapes the architecture of empathy. Disconnection shapes the architecture of vigilance. Imagine the world through the eyes of the infant self. Light is overwhelming. Sound is vast. Every sensation feels enormous, unfiltered, raw. The body does not yet know where it ends and the world begins. This early period is pure vulnerability, and because of that vulnerability, every moment carries weight. A soothing touch becomes a message that the world can be trusted. An inconsistent presence becomes a message that the world is unpredictable. A harsh environment becomes a warning system that may remain active for decades. The child does not choose these messages. The child absorbs them. And in absorbing them, the child becomes shaped by them. These early impressions do not disappear. They become woven into the nervous system itself. They are stored not as images or stories, but as patterns of emotion and expectation. Patterns the adult self may mistake for personality when they are actually adaptations. You may soften your breath again here, if it feels natural. Let it settle you, just a little. Let the exhale be a gentle release. In the first years, the world teaches the child who they are. The caregiver's face becomes the first mirror of identity. A loving face teaches worthiness. A distracted face teaches invisibility. An angry face teaches danger. A depressed face teaches emotional distance. A frightened face teaches anxiety. A chaotic environment teaches the child to stay alert, scanning for the next change in mood or tone. These reflections are powerful because the child has no alternative perspective. A child does not think, "My parent is overwhelmed." A child thinks, "Something must be wrong with me." The self is born from these early interpretations. And though the adult mind may learn new stories, the body often holds on to the old ones. These years form the core of the inner child, the raw, unguarded, sensitive presence inside you that still feels small in the face of certain emotions, that still longs for reassurance in moments of uncertainty, that still seeks comfort when overwhelmed, that still remembers the first sensations of being alive. We are shaped before we can speak. We are patterned before we can choose. And yet, understanding those patterns gives us power. It gives us the ability to soften them, to update them, to heal them gently from the inside out. Let us move forward with a quiet breath into the next layer of this emotional architecture: attachment and safety. In the earliest moments of life, attachment is not an emotional preference. It is a biological necessity. A child is not born knowing how to survive. A child survives by bonding, by reaching, by sensing the presence of another nervous system that offers warmth, rhythm, and protection. Attachment is the original language of the human species. It is older than speech, older than memory, older than civilization itself. It is written into the architecture of the brain, into the pulse of the heart, into the slow, steady waves of the parasympathetic nervous system. When a caregiver holds a child close, heartbeats synchronize. Breath begins to mirror breath. The vagus nerve, the great channel of calm, activates in response to warmth and touch. Oxytocin floods the bloodstream, not as an abstract chemical, but as a message. You are not alone. You are safe. You belong. This message becomes the foundation of emotional security, and the absence of this message becomes the foundation of lifelong vigilance. Attachment is not perfect in any family. No caregiver is flawless. And yet, the pattern that forms, the general emotional climate, is what tells the child how to interpret the world. In a secure environment, the caregiver is present enough, responsive enough, attuned enough. The child cries and is met with comfort. The child wanders and is allowed space. The child returns and is welcomed. In this dance of closeness and independence, a stable internal model is formed. The world is predictable. I matter. Others can be trusted. In insecure environments, the pattern becomes less clear. A caregiver might be loving one moment and distant the next. They may be overwhelmed, anxious, depressed, preoccupied, or struggling in silence. The child feels the inconsistency but cannot understand its cause. And so the inner child learns a different set of messages. I must cling tightly so I am not forgotten. I must not need too much, or I will be pushed away. I must stay alert, because safety can disappear. I must hide my feelings to avoid upsetting those I rely on. I must become the caretaker, even as a child. These lessons do not vanish. They crystallize into patterns that continue into adulthood, shaping the way we love, the way we defend ourselves, the way we interpret silence, the way we react to conflict, the way we feel when someone turns toward us or away from us. Pause here for a moment, if you wish. Notice a tiny softening of your jaw, a gentle exhale. These small acts of awareness offer your inner world the sense of safety it may have needed long ago. Attachment styles are not labels. They are adaptations. A child does not become anxious, avoidant, or disorganized by choice. The child becomes what the environment teaches them to become in order to stay connected. Inconsistent care creates hypervigilance. Emotional distance creates self-reliance. Chaos creates fragmentation. But even these patterns are rooted in intelligence. The inner child adapts to protect the self, to preserve closeness, to avoid pain, to stay alive in an emotional sense. In adulthood, these early maps influence every intimate connection. A partner's delayed text can activate fear that feels older than language. A moment of criticism can echo with childhood shame. A gesture of affection can feel foreign and almost unbearable. A conflict can trigger ancient instincts to run, fight, freeze, or appease. These reactions are not evidence of immaturity. They are echoes of a child who once had to interpret the world without the guidance of adult reasoning. At the core of attachment is the nervous system's simplest question: am I safe with you? If the answer was often yes, the adult self moves through the world with openness. If the answer was often uncertain, the adult self moves through the world with caution. If the answer was unpredictable or frightening, the adult self carries complexity that is often misunderstood even by the self. Attachment is the emotional blueprint, and every blueprint can be understood, revised, and healed, not erased, but expanded. As we continue, let your breath find a slow and natural rhythm. Let your shoulders settle just a little more. You do not need to perform stillness. You may simply allow it. And now we move into the next shaping force of the inner child: emotional imprinting. Children learn emotion not through instruction, but through immersion. Before language, before explanation, before the ability to reflect, the child absorbs emotional states directly. A caregiver's fear becomes the child's fear. A caregiver's calm becomes the child's calm. A caregiver's anger becomes the child's alarm. And a caregiver's joy becomes the child's sense of possibility. This is emotional imprinting, the silent education that happens long before words enter the mind. The child's nervous system is designed to synchronize with the emotional environment. Mirror neurons reflect not only actions, but feelings, tone of voice, facial expression, posture, breath rhythm. Each becomes a lesson in how to respond to the world. The child does not think, "My mother is stressed." The child feels, "Something is unsafe." The child does not think, "My father is overwhelmed." The child feels, "I must be careful." The child does not think, "They are upset about something unrelated." The child feels, "It must be my fault." Because the child is the center of their own universe, every emotional wave around them becomes personal. Praise becomes identity. Silence becomes confusion. Scolding becomes shame. Warmth becomes belonging. A smile becomes a sanctuary. And these early emotional imprints form a spectrum. Some children imprint joy easily. Some imprint fear effortlessly. Some imprint shame as if it were gravity. Some imprint uncertainty so deeply they cannot explain why they always expect something to go wrong. These imprints are not memories. They are sensations. They live in the body. They echo in adulthood through patterns that feel automatic. A raised voice may tighten the throat. A moment of disappointment may echo with childhood shame. A sudden laugh may open the chest with warmth and familiarity. The inner child remembers what the conscious mind forgets. Pause again, if you like. Notice your breath as it moves through you, slow and steady. Let your body know there is nothing it needs to guard against in this moment. Emotional imprinting is powerful because it is preverbal. You cannot talk yourself out of it. You can only understand it, meet it with compassion, and slowly reshape the patterns that formed under pressure. And to understand it fully, we must step deeper into the core of the inner child's emotional world, memory and the child's self. Memory in childhood is not what most people imagine. We often think of memory as pictures, stories, moments we can recall. But the earliest years of life leave no such traces. The hippocampus, the brain structure responsible for forming narrative memories, is still immature, which means the most influential experiences of childhood are stored in a different way. They become implicit memories, non-verbal, emotional, bodily traces that shape how we feel long before we understand why. A child who felt safe will carry a quiet, almost invisible ease into the world. A child who felt unsafe will carry a vigilance that becomes the background hum of adulthood. A child who felt unseen may grow into an adult who feels invisible, even in loving relationships. A child who felt overwhelmed may become an adult who withdraws to avoid emotional chaos. These implicit memories are not remembered. They are relived. They surface as reactions, as tension, as sudden anxiety, as confusion during conflict, as a sinking feeling when someone expresses disapproval. They appear in the body first, a tightness around the heart, a pressure in the throat, a clenching in the stomach, a sudden rush of heat or a collapse of energy. The body remembers what the mind never encoded. This is why you may sometimes feel younger than your age in moments of stress or intimacy. Because the part of you responding in those moments is indeed younger. It is the child self, still carrying the imprint of early experiences, stepping forward to protect you, or warn you, or react in the only way it learned. Take a slow breath, if it feels natural. Let the exhale soften your chest, a gentle reminder that your adult self is here, witnessing these memories from a place of greater capacity. Implicit memory is powerful, not because it is detailed, but because it is foundational. It shapes the emotional reflexes that guide your life. Reflexes that feel like truth. Reflexes that feel like you. The child self remembers through sensation, and those sensations become instincts in adulthood. The instinct to withdraw, the instinct to cling, the instinct to appease, the instinct to stay small, the instinct to fight, the instinct to freeze, the instinct to avoid feeling too much. The inner child built these instincts to navigate a world that was larger than their ability to understand, and the adult self may continue using these same instincts even when the environment has changed. The result is an emotional time warp. A moment in adulthood can activate the nervous system in a way that reflects something from decades earlier. A partner's sigh, a friend's silence, a supervisor's tone, a mistake you make, a moment of vulnerability, a moment of closeness. The child self steps forward because the child self is the one who learned emotional survival. Memory is not a story, it is a pattern, and these patterns live on because they once kept you safe. Take a moment, if you wish, to let your shoulders fall slightly. Let the space around your heart open a little more. You are not revisiting these memories. You are simply recognizing the ways they have shaped you. And now we move into the heart of adulthood, where the inner child becomes most visible, not as nostalgia, but as emotional habit. The inner child in adulthood. The inner child does not vanish with age. Instead, it blends into the adult self, quietly influencing thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. This influence is often subtle, surfacing in the smallest moments of everyday life. In the way you respond to a text message, in the way you interpret a facial expression, in the way you feel when someone raises their voice or withdraws, or reaches out to you with genuine care. The inner child appears in relationships most clearly, because relationships are the mirrors in which early patterns reawaken. When someone gets close, the child self stirs. When someone pulls away, the child self responds. When someone offers affection, the child self may feel overwhelmed by vulnerability. Your adult mind may know that a moment is simple, ordinary, or harmless, but your body reacts with the instincts of a much younger self. A forgotten message triggers the echo of being overlooked. A curt tone triggers the imprint of childhood criticism. A conflict triggers the child's fear of losing connection. A loving gesture triggers the unfamiliar sensation of safety. Many adults walk through life experiencing emotional reactions that are disproportionate to the current moment, but perfectly proportionate to their childhood. This does not mean immaturity. It means continuity. The emotional brain does not know time. It only knows familiarity. If you grew up needing to stay quiet, you may speak softly, even when you have the right to be bold. If you grew up needing to stay small, you may shrink from opportunities that require visibility. If you grew up needing to please others, you may struggle to say no, even when your body is exhausted. If you grew up walking on emotional eggshells, you may sense danger in moments that are simply uncertain. If you grew up feeling unworthy, you may mistrust affection, even when it's sincere. These patterns are not flaws. They are echoes of strategies that once kept you safe. Take one slow breath in. Let the exhale melt downward through your torso. Let the ground beneath you catch some of your weight. A small reminder that you are here, in this moment, with far more capacity than the child self once had. The inner child influences how you form bonds. It influences how you handle conflict, how you interpret silence, how you respond to disappointment, how you cope with stress, how you regulate emotion, how you protect yourself. These early patterns become the lens through which adult life is experienced. But these patterns can change. Not by erasing the child's self, but by understanding it, by listening to it, by recognizing that the adult self now has strength, awareness, and agency that the child never had. This understanding becomes most important when we explore one of the deepest wounds carried from childhood into adulthood: trauma and fragmentation. Trauma in childhood is not defined only by catastrophic events. Trauma can be loud or silent, dramatic or invisible. It can come from chaos, or it can come from absence. Trauma is, at its core, anything that overwhelms the child's developing nervous system before they have the ability to understand, process, or escape the experience. A harsh voice, a caregiver's unpredictable moods, chronic tension in the home, emotional neglect, feeling responsible for an adult's feelings, being shamed for natural needs, being left alone too often, witnessing conflict, experiencing physical or emotional harm, or simply feeling unseen in moments when connection was needed most. These moments, whether recurring or singular, carve deep impressions. The child's nervous system becomes shaped not by understanding, but by survival. When a child is overwhelmed, the brain does something remarkable. It fragments. It sets aside the unbearable feelings. It tucks them into hidden corners of the psyche in order to keep functioning. And this fragmentation is not weakness. It is protection. It is the mind's way of saying, "This is too much to feel right now. I will put it away so you can continue." The child self splits into parts, some adaptive, some wounded, some protective. These parts do not disappear as the child grows. They simply go underground. They remain in the emotional body, resurfacing in adulthood when similar feelings are triggered. Take a slow breath, and as you exhale, imagine a gentle widening across the chest, a little more space for understanding. Trauma creates a nervous system that remains alert long after danger has passed, a body that braces, a mind that anticipates loss or conflict, a heart that longs for closeness but fears it as well. Trauma teaches a child that the world is unpredictable, that emotions are dangerous, that connection can hurt, that safety is conditional. And so the child adapts through one of the four primal survival responses: fight, to create a sense of control; flight, to escape overwhelming emotion; freeze, to shut down when there's no safe action to take; fawn, to keep others calm by pleasing them. These responses become personality traits in adulthood, not because they reflect who you truly are, but because they reflect who you needed to be. The fragmented child self holds the emotions that were too heavy to carry: shame that wasn't yours, fear that wasn't your fault, anger that had no safe place to go, sadness that was too big for a small body, confusion that no one helped untangle. Adults often feel these emotions without realizing they belong to a younger version of themselves, the part that still lives within, waiting to be understood. You may feel suddenly small in conflict. You may feel frozen when expressing needs. You may feel panicked by silence. You may feel guilt for setting boundaries. You may feel unworthy of affection. You may feel anger that seems out of proportion. You may feel sadness that seems bottomless. These are not signs of brokenness. They are signs that the inner child is calling out, asking for what was once missing. When the child self fragments, the psyche also creates protectors, parts of you designed to shield the wounded emotions from resurfacing. These protectors are intelligent. They are loyal. They keep you safe the only way they know how. But they can also create barriers, walls that prevent healing because they are still guarding the wounds. Let your breath settle lower into the belly if it feels right. A small reminder to your body that you are grounded enough to continue this exploration. To understand the next chapter, we must look closely at these protectors, the guardians of childhood wounds. The inner protector. Every child develops protective strategies to survive emotional pain. These strategies are creative, adaptive, and often incredibly effective in the environments where they were first needed. The inner protector forms from the deepest instinct of survival, the need to remain connected to caregivers. If the child cannot change the environment, the child changes themselves. Some children become hyper-independent, learning never to rely on others. Some become the peacemaker, smoothing every tension to avoid conflict. Some become the achiever, seeking perfection to earn approval. Some become the invisible one, staying small to avoid drawing attention. Some become the caretaker, meeting everyone else's needs before their own. Some become the comedian, using humor to deflect pain. Some become the helper, rescuing others so they don't have to feel their own wounds. Some become the problem solver, always scanning for danger. Some become the tough one, hiding every vulnerable feeling. Some become the good child, suppressing all needs to keep peace. Each of these protectors once served an essential purpose. They prevented pain. They minimized punishment. They maintained connection. They made the chaotic world of childhood more manageable. These protectors believe they are keeping you safe. They do not realize that you have grown. They do not know the danger is gone. The adult self may not want to push others away, but the protector does. The adult self may want to be open, but the protector fears vulnerability. The adult self may want intimacy, but the protector fears being hurt again. The adult self may want rest, but the protector demands productivity. The adult self may want softness, but the protector insists on hardness. And so conflict arises inside, between the adult self that longs for connection and the child protector that fears it. Take a slow breath in. Feel how the body responds. Exhale without force. Let the breath soften the edges of your awareness. The inner protector is not your enemy. It is a younger version of you, still working with old information, still guarding old wounds, still believing you are as fragile as you once were. To move forward, you do not fight these protectors. You meet them. You understand them. You thank them for their service. And only then can you gently guide them into a new role, no longer as shields, but as allies. This understanding prepares the ground for the next chapter, the core of healing. Healing the inner child. Healing the inner child is not about erasing the past. It is about untangling the emotional threads that still bind you to it. It is the slow, patient work of giving yourself now what you needed then, not in grand gestures, but in quiet, steady moments of compassion, presence, and awareness. Healing begins with acknowledgement. The simple, profound recognition that the child self exists. That they learned patterns not because they were flawed, but because they were adapting. That they protected you in the only ways they knew how. Many people fear confronting their wounds because they imagine it means reliving pain. But healing the inner child is not a return to suffering. It is a return to connection with yourself. Take a soft breath. Let the inhale lift you gently. Let the exhale settle you deeper into the moment. Healing happens through reparenting, through emotional integration, and through the slow reweaving of trust within the self. These processes happen in layers, often beginning with something simple yet profound. Presence. Presence. To sit with your feelings instead of running from them. To notice your reactions without judging them. To observe the child self with curiosity rather than criticism. To treat your internal world with the same gentleness you would offer an actual child. Presence is healing because it tells the inner child the truth. You are not alone anymore. Someone is here, and that someone is me. Self-compassion is another pillar. Not the soft, indulgent compassion often misunderstood, but the courageous kind. The willingness to stand beside your own pain without turning away. The ability to say to yourself, "Of course you feel this way. It makes sense." Self-compassion rewires shame. It melts defenses. It transforms vulnerability into strength. Emotional integration comes next. This is the process of allowing previously fragmented parts of yourself to return. Not forcefully, not all at once, but gradually. You may notice moments where a feeling rises. Fear, sadness, anger, longing. And instead of suppressing it, you breathe with it. You let it exist. You let it speak. The more you do this, the more your inner world begins to trust you. The child self only heals when the adult self becomes safe enough to feel. Let your breath flow slowly. Let your shoulders soften, as if telling your body it does not need to brace in this moment. Gentle exposure to safety is the next layer. When childhood taught you that connection is dangerous, or that needs are burdens, or that vulnerability leads to pain, safety must be relearned. This happens through small acts. Allowing yourself to receive kindness without shrinking. Letting yourself rest without guilt. Setting a boundary and surviving the discomfort. Saying no and realizing the world does not collapse. Letting someone in, just a little, and noticing that you are still whole. Each small act sends a message to the child self. You are safe now. The danger you feared has passed. You no longer have to protect yourself from everything. Somatic grounding plays an essential role. Because childhood wounds live in the body, healing must include the body. Touching your chest gently, placing a hand on your belly, feeling the weight of your body on the earth, letting your breath anchor you. These are not symbolic gestures, they are physiological signals of safety. And then there is reparenting, the heart of inner child work. Reparenting is not pretending to be your parent. It is becoming the adult you once needed. The one who listens. The one who comforts. The one who protects. The one who sets boundaries. The one who tells the truth without cruelty. The one who holds you through difficult feelings. The one who believes in your worth. The one who does not abandon you. Reparenting means you no longer outsource your self-worth to others. You no longer depend on another adult to soothe wounds that formed decades ago. You begin offering yourself what you once waited for. This is not easy work, but it is transformative. It reshapes the nervous system. It rewires emotional reflexes. It turns survival patterns into pathways of resilience. It turns fragmentation into wholeness. Take a slow inhale, deep enough to fill the ribs. Let the exhale fall away softly. Notice the subtle warmth that arrives with being present. Healing does not erase pain. It integrates it. It weaves it into the larger story of who you have become. It allows you to look at your past without becoming trapped in it. It creates a sense of inner stability, the feeling that no matter what happens externally, you can remain connected to yourself internally. And in this new stability, a new part of you begins to form, a part that holds the child self with strength and wisdom, a part that gently leads rather than fears, a part that is not shaped by the past, but informed by it. The wise adult self. The wise adult self is not a perfected version of you. It is not a higher self floating above life's struggles. It is not an idealized image of calmness or control. Instead, it is the grounded, present, emotionally mature part of you that develops slowly through experience, reflection, and healing. It is the part of you that grows strong enough to hold the inner child, steady enough to guide your reactions, and patient enough to listen without judgment. This adult self is not imposed on you from outside. It is cultivated from within. It emerges as you learn to regulate your emotions, understand your patterns, and respond to life with more awareness than reflex. It is shaped through insight, through compassion, through time, and through the gentle discipline of turning inward instead of abandoning yourself. The wise adult self becomes the anchor in moments when old patterns try to pull you backward. When you feel the familiar tension in your chest, when shame rises unexpectedly, when fear emerges from nowhere, when someone's tone awakens echoes of the past. Instead of collapsing into those feelings, the wise adult self steps forward and says, "I see you. I know you're afraid, but we are safe now. I am here." Take a slow breath. Let the inhale fill the sides of your ribs. Let the exhale soften your spine downward, grounding you a little more deeply. The wise adult self is not here to silence the child. It is here to translate the child's feelings into understandable language, to hold space for the emotions that once felt unbearable, to help the nervous system remain steady when the inner child becomes overwhelmed. This adult self is flexible. It listens. It can discern between the past and the present. It knows that not every raised voice is a threat. Not every conflict is abandonment. Not every silence is rejection. It knows that you have resources now, skills, insight, agency, and strength that you did not possess as a child. The wise adult self stands between the world and the vulnerable parts within you, not as a wall of protection, but as a bridge of understanding. It communicates outward with clarity and inward with compassion. It becomes the internal parent that the child self always needed. This adult part develops through intentional practice, taking responsibility for your reactions without blaming yourself, noticing triggers with curiosity rather than shame, choosing to pause before responding, breathing through emotional waves instead of drowning in them, setting boundaries with kindness and firmness, letting yourself feel sadness without collapsing into it, letting yourself feel anger without becoming consumed by it, letting yourself feel fear without being guided by it. As you evolve, the wise adult self grows stronger. The emotional storms of life become easier to navigate. You recover more quickly. You stay connected to yourself even in discomfort. You rely less on old coping mechanisms and more on grounded awareness. And from this place of groundedness, something remarkable becomes possible. You begin to feel the depth of your emotions in a new way, not as threats, but as signals, not as burdens, but as messages, not as proof of weakness, but as expressions of humanity. This shift allows you to reconnect with the body, where so much of childhood experience is stored. So let us move now into the realm where emotion and physical sensation intertwine. Emotion and the body. The body is the first home of the inner child, long before words, long before meaning, long before the mind could understand anything about the world. the body understood everything. It felt warmth, it felt cold, it felt hunger, fullness, softness, tension, comfort, and fear. It felt the presence of safety and the absence of it. It felt the rhythm of a parent's heartbeat and the stillness of loneliness. It felt held. It felt dropped. It felt seen. It felt ignored. These sensations became the earliest emotional memories, woven directly into the nervous system. The body holds what the mind has forgotten. Every flinch, every tightening, every sudden withdrawal, every collapsing of the chest, every knot in the stomach, every heaviness in the limbs, every wave of shame that feels too large for the moment, every spike of anxiety that seems to come from nowhere. These are bodily echoes of moments when the child self had no protection, no explanation, no way to make sense of what was happening. The body remembers everything. Take a slow breath. Let the inhale expand gently into your belly. Let the exhale settle downward into your legs, grounding you. The connection between emotion and the body is not symbolic. It is biological. When a child experiences fear, the sympathetic nervous system activates. The heart races, muscles tense, cortisol rises. When a child experiences safety, the parasympathetic system softens the breath, relaxes the muscles, stabilizes the heart rate. These responses become wiring, repeated patterns that shape how the adult body responds to stress and intimacy. A childhood filled with unpredictability often produces an adult body that cannot relax easily. A childhood filled with rejection often produces an adult body that contracts under scrutiny. While a childhood filled with chaos often produces an adult body that braces even during calm moments. A childhood filled with love produces an adult body that can return to calm more quickly. Your emotional reactions today may not match your current circumstances, but they match your history. The body reacts faster than the mind, faster than awareness, faster than logic. It reacts with memory, not thought. Healing the inner child requires listening to the body, because the body has been speaking the truth all along. Its signals guide you toward the emotional roots you still carry. A tight chest may say, "I was once afraid of disappointing someone." A clenched jaw may say, "I was once trying not to cry." A curled posture may say, "I learned to make myself small." A sudden freeze may say, "I was once powerless." A racing heart may say, "I learned to anticipate danger." A softness in the belly may say, "I am finally safe." As you reconnect with the body, you reconnect with the child who lived inside it. Somatic healing begins gently, feeling the breath without forcing it, letting the shoulders drop just a little, allowing the spine to lengthen, relaxing the muscles of the face, placing a hand on the heart or on the belly, noticing the temperature of your skin, feeling the ground beneath your feet. These simple acts signal safety to the nervous system. They tell the body it no longer needs to brace. They tell the child self that the threat has passed. When the body feels safe, emotion becomes accessible. When emotion becomes accessible, healing becomes possible. And when healing becomes possible, the inner child begins to trust again. To understand the inner child fully, though, we must look beyond the personal. We must explore the environment that shapes every family, every childhood, and every emotional blueprint. We must explore the world that taught the child self who they were allowed to be. Culture and childhood. Culture and childhood. Every child is born into a world already shaped by stories. Long before they understand language, they absorb the emotional atmosphere of their culture. They inherit its expectations, its values, its myths, its fears, its hopes. They learn which feelings are welcomed and which are discouraged. They learn what it means to be good, to be strong, to be gentle, to be obedient, to be independent, to be deserving of love. Culture is the unseen backdrop of childhood. It sets the rules before a child even knows there are rules. Some cultures encourage emotional expression, teaching children that their feelings are valid and safe to share. Others encourage restraint, teaching children that quietness and control are signs of maturity. Some cultures emphasize independence, pushing children to grow up quickly. Others emphasize interdependence, surrounding the child with extended family, shared responsibility, and communal identity. No culture is perfect. Every culture shapes childhood in both nurturing and limiting ways. Take a soft breath. Let the inhale gently expand your chest. Let the exhale fall with ease. The messages a child learns from their culture become part of their inner world. In cultures where achievement is valued above all else, children may learn that their worth depends on performance. In cultures where obedience is rewarded, children may learn to silence their needs. In cultures where toughness is praised, children may learn to hide vulnerability. In cultures where sensitivity is cherished, children may learn to be attuned to the emotions of others. In cultures focused on survival, children may learn to stay alert and cautious. In cultures focused on self-expression, children may learn to explore identity freely. These cultural messages shape the emotional blueprint the child carries into adulthood. They influence how a person interprets love, failure, conflict, and belonging. They determine whether seeking help feels natural or shameful. They affect whether a person feels comfortable saying no, expressing needs, or setting boundaries. Culture also dictates how trauma is handled. Some cultures speak openly about emotional wounds. Others avoid them, bury them, or minimize them. In some cultures, families gather to protect children during hardship. In others, children are expected to endure quietly. The inner child learns not only from caregivers, but from the entire emotional ecosystem that surrounds the family. School, religion, community, media, traditions, holidays, stories, rituals, songs. All of these shape the developing sense of self. Even the myths a culture tells its children leave imprints, stories of heroes, of sacrifice, of obedience, of rebellion, of courage, of shame. These stories whisper, "This is who you should be. This is who you must not be. This is what makes you lovable. This is what makes you unacceptable." The inner child internalizes these messages without question. As adults, many people do not realize that their struggles are rooted in inherited expectations, voices from the culture rather than truths of the self. When you feel pressure to always be productive, when rest feels unfamiliar, when expressing emotion feels dangerous, when setting boundaries feels wrong, you may be feeling the weight of cultural conditioning, not personal weakness. Ideals of masculinity and femininity also shape the child's self. Boys taught not to cry often grow into men who struggle with vulnerability. Girls taught to be agreeable often grow into women who struggle with self-advocacy. Sensitive children in harsh cultures may grow into adults who feel too delicate for the world. Strong-willed children in rigid cultures may grow into adults who feel guilt for their natural assertiveness. And yet, within every culture, there is also wisdom, traditions of storytelling, rituals of belonging, patterns of communal support, lessons of resilience. values that give shape to identity and connection. The task of adulthood is not to reject your culture, but to understand how it shaped your inner child, what it gave you, and what it withheld. Take a breath that moves all the way into your ribs. Let the exhale settle into your spine. This is a way of telling your body that you are free now to choose which parts of your inheritance you keep and which you gently release. Understanding culture leads us toward a deeper question. Not just how childhood is shaped externally, but what childhood means internally. What remains constant in us across time? What stays pure even as we grow? What essence we carry from infancy to adulthood? This brings us to a more philosophical dimension of the inner child. The philosophy of the child self. The philosophy of the child self. What does it mean to have an inner child? Not in the psychological sense alone, but in the deepest, most essential way. Across cultures, across centuries, across everything we call human. The child self is not merely a memory or a stage of development. It is a presence, a continuity, a thread of being that remains untouched by time. Every human carries within them an essence formed in the early years, a sense of wonder, a capacity for joy, a longing for safety, a hunger for connection, a spark of curiosity, a vulnerability that is not weakness, but openness. Childhood is not something we leave behind. It is something we layer over. Beneath every adult layer, there is still the original shape. Philosophers across the ages have explored this mystery. They observed that the deepest parts of humanity, the desire to be loved, the fear of being abandoned, the need for meaning, are rooted in something ancient, something childlike. Not childish, but childlike, innocent, curious, receptive, unfiltered by cynicism or defense. Take a slow breath. Let the inhale lift the front of your chest. Let the exhale soften the back of your body. Notice the subtle shift, the settling that comes with presence. The inner child is often described as fragile, but in truth, the child self carries profound strength, the ability to attach, the willingness to trust, the audacity to hope, the imagination to see possibility where none seems to exist. These are not small traits. They are the foundations of resilience and creativity. They are the roots of meaning itself. Childhood is the first encounter with existence, and because of that, it shapes the emotional lens through which we experience the entire arc of life. This is why the inner child endures, not as a psychological artifact, but as the original experience of being alive. Time moves forward, but the emotional body does not age in the same way. Parts of you remain as young as the moments that shape them. When you feel sudden joy that lifts you, that is your child self. When you feel deep fear that shrinks you, that is your child self. When you feel lonely, even in the presence of others, that is your child self calling out for connection in the language it learned long ago. The philosophical truth is this: we are not singular selves. We are layered selves. We are the child, the adolescent, and the adult all at once. We are the frightened parts, the hopeful parts, the dreaming parts, and the wise parts woven together. The inner child is not trapped in time. It is timeless. Its needs are timeless. Its questions are timeless. Its longings are timeless. Who will protect me? Am I loved? Am I enough? Will someone stay? Can I be myself? Is it safe to feel? These questions echo through every stage of life, no matter how old we become. The wise adult self learns to answer them, not with perfection, but with presence. The child self is not asking for extraordinary gestures. It is asking for understanding, for patience, for gentleness, for truth, for someone to stay with it through emotions that once felt too big to handle. Let your breath drift deeper. Let the ribs widen softly. Let the exhale dissolve tension. This small act of awareness is a dialogue with your inner world. A whisper to the child self that the adult self is listening. When philosophers speak of the self, they describe it as a river, always flowing but retaining its essence. The child self is the source of that river. Everything that follows carries its minerals. And healing is not about changing the river, but clearing its waters so its depth and clarity can be seen again. Understanding the philosophy of the inner child brings us to an essential point. Healing does not just transform the past, it transforms the future. It shapes who we become and how we move forward. It guides the life we create from here. Now we turn toward the vision of what comes next. The future self. The future self. Healing the inner child does not just change how you understand the past. It changes the path ahead of you. It softens the edges of your reactions. It widens the space between stimulus and response. It opens inner doors that were once closed, not because you lacked strength, but because you lacked safety. When the child self begins to trust the adult self, the future begins to shift, not suddenly, but steadily, like dawn dissolving darkness one shade at a time. The future self is not a distant dream or an idealized version of perfection. It is the natural outcome of healing, of self-awareness, of slowly updating the emotional blueprint that once dictated your patterns. This future self emerges not because you strive to become someone new, but because you finally allow yourself to be who you truly are beneath the layers of adaptation. Take a slow breath in. Feel the air expand warmly into your chest. Let the exhale draw you softly back into your body. The future self is shaped by every moment in which you choose presence over avoidance, compassion over criticism, awareness over automatic reaction. Each of these moments becomes a tiny shift in your inner architecture, a micro-adjustment in your emotional wiring. Over time, these shifts accumulate into something profound. You begin to respond instead of react. You pause before collapsing into old patterns. You recognize when the child self is speaking. You bring the wise adult self forward to hold the moment. You speak your needs with clarity. You allow boundaries to protect you rather than isolate you. You choose people who can meet you with kindness. You allow yourself to rest without guilt. You let tenderness return without fear. The future self is the self who no longer fears feeling, who no longer confuses survival strategies with identity, who no longer shrinks from love, who no longer chases affection from those who cannot offer it, who no longer carries the entire weight of childhood into every adult interaction. The future self is the one who finally feels at home inside their own mind. This transformation is not linear. It is cyclical. You will revisit old feelings. You will stumble into old patterns. You will have moments where the child self feels frightened again. But each time you return to yourself more quickly. Each time the adult self steps forward sooner. Each time you anchor yourself with more grace. Healing is not about never hurting. Healing is about never abandoning yourself again when you hurt. Allow your breath to deepen. Let the exhale stretch gently down your spine like a soft thread grounding you. The future self is wise because it understands the past without becoming trapped in it. It is compassionate because it knows the weight the child once carried. It is strong because it has integrated the protector parts rather than fighting them. It is open because it has learned that vulnerability is not danger, it is connection. In relationships, the future self chooses differently, not from fear or longing or unconscious repetition, but from clarity, from a sense of worth, from the quiet confidence that you deserve emotional safety. In identity, the future self grows into authenticity, interests emerge, boundaries sharpen, creativity awakens. You rediscover parts of yourself that were lost. You develop new ones that never had the chance to form. In emotion, the future self allows feelings to move through the body without resistance. Sadness becomes a wave instead of a collapse. Anger becomes a signal instead of a threat. Fear becomes information instead of destiny. Joy becomes easier to receive. And most importantly, the future self forms a new relationship with time. You begin to sense that healing is not a return to who you were before the wounds, but an evolution into someone who carries both the pain and the strength with grace. The future self is not waiting somewhere ahead. It is growing inside you now, with every breath, with every moment of awareness, with every act of care toward the tender parts within you. And as we arrive at the final stage of this journey, we bring together everything we have explored: the origins, the imprints, the wounds, the protectors, the body, the culture, the essence, and we integrate them into a coherent sense of self. The child, the adult, the survivor, the healer, the future self, all of them living in one human being. Let us move now into the closing reflection, the integration of the entire journey. Conclusion. The journey through the inner child is not merely a psychological exploration. It is a return, an uncovering of the earliest layers of yourself, a remembering of who you were before the world taught you how to protect, how to adapt, how to hide, and how to survive. It is the recognition that within every adult, no matter how capable or weary, there is still a small presence longing for understanding, safety, and connection. As we come to the end of this exploration, take a gentle breath in. Let the air move down into your belly, expanding softly. Let the exhale settle your body into the present moment. This breath is not a technique. It is an act of acknowledgement, a way of saying to yourself, I am here. I am listening. The inner child is not broken. It is not weak. It is not trapped in the past. It is simply carrying the truths of your earliest experiences, the emotions you felt when you were too small to defend yourself, too young to understand, too dependent to walk away. These emotions were never wrong. They were responses to reality in its rawest form. The adult self you are today carries strengths the child never had. You have resources now, agency, awareness, words, boundaries, wisdom. You have the ability to soothe yourself, to choose differently, to understand what once overwhelmed you. You can hold your emotions instead of being consumed by them. You can create safety instead of searching for it. You can offer the child self-compassion instead of criticism. Healing is not about becoming invulnerable. It is about becoming whole. It is about letting every part of you, every age, every wound, every instinct, return home inside your awareness. When the inner child feels held, the protectors soften, the body opens, the emotions settle, the nervous system shifts, the future becomes more expansive. Take another slow breath. Let your shoulders lower. Let your chest widen gently. Let your jaw unhook. These small releases send powerful messages to the oldest parts of your psyche. You are safe. You are cared for. You are not alone. Remember this. The inner child learned patterns. The adult self can unlearn them. The child self absorbed fear. The adult self can bring understanding. The child self sought protection. The adult self can become that protector. The child self longed to be loved. The adult self can offer that love now. Everything you needed then can be offered now, moment by moment, breath by breath. The past shaped you, but it does not have to define your future. The wounds left impressions, but they do not have to dictate your destiny. The child self holds pain, but also wonder, curiosity, sensitivity, creativity, imagination, and emotional truth. When you walk through life with the child self in one hand and the adult self in the other, you become something extraordinary, a human being integrated across time, a person who understands where they came from and where they are going, a person who sees their triggers as messages, not failures, a person who moves through relationships with clarity and compassion, a person who responds to life with groundedness rather than reflex. You do not have to rush this process. Healing is not a race. It is a rhythm, a gentle unfolding, a rewriting of the emotional blueprint that once shaped you. Every moment of awareness is healing. Every act of self-compassion is healing. Every breath that softens your body is healing. Let this final breath be slow and easy. Let it move through you as if you're releasing the weight of many years. Feel the subtle shift, the inner space that grows when you choose to be present with yourself. You are not the wounds you carry. You are the one carrying them. And you are strong enough, wise enough, compassionate enough to hold every part of your story with courage. The child self, the protector, the adult self, the future self. All of them belong. All of them are part of you. All of them can heal. This journey does not end here. It continues every time you pause, breathe, and choose to meet yourself with kindness. Every time you soften instead of harden. Every time you listen instead of turn away. Every time you choose presence over silence. May you walk forward with more understanding, more gentleness, and more connection to the deepest roots of your being. May the inner child feel seen. May the adult self feel strong. May the future self feel possible. And may you be held by your own presence every step of the way.